Dead America, Tales from Las Vegas, The Outpost, by Derek Slayton. Chapter 1. Nearly 36 hours had passed since the soldiers in the Supercenter warehouse compound had left the gates. Their bodies were bruised, muscles screaming from injuries both minor and severe. Their spirits were exhausted from the constant battles with the undead, the weight of survival pressing down harder with each passing hour. Rest was required, and Foster had made the call to hunker down and recharge. But it wasn't just recharging that was on the list of reasons why they had sat tight for a day and a half. On their last venture outside the gates, they had spotted zombies that had begun slowing down. Instead of having that terrifying speed that would give a professional sprinter a run for their money, they were shambling, moving at a fraction of the pace that had made them so deadly in those first hours. The hope was that it wasn't an anomaly, that the creatures were indeed breaking down. In their calls with Midnight Mike the previous day, the radio DJ confirmed their suspicions. His listeners had been calling in from around the city, reporting they were seeing the same thing. Zombies losing coordination, movements becoming jerky and unsteady. The constant strain on their bodies was taking a toll. Captain Foster hoped that the trend would continue as the days rolled by. However, he knew he couldn't wait forever. There was too much to get done, too many people relying on him and his team to come in for the rescue. Every hour they stayed behind these walls was another hour someone out there was running out of food, out of water, out of hope. But the captain knew he couldn't do anything before the sun came up, which was still a good hour away. That gave him time to wander over to the kitchen for coffee, his bare feet padding quietly across the office carpet. He'd woken before his alarm again, his internal clock refusing to let him rest, despite how much his body needed it. Sleep had been fitful at best, filled with images of dead eyes and grasping hands. As he entered the small break room area, the aroma hit him, rich and dark, the smell of fresh brewed coffee filling his nostrils. A confused smile crossed his face. "I'm glad someone went to the trouble of brewing it, but what are they doing up this early?" Foster muttered. He shrugged, fixing himself a cup of coffee in one of the mismatched mugs they'd pulled from the warehouse inventory. The ceramic was warm in his hands as he added a splash of cream, watching it swirl through the dark liquid. He took a tentative sip, savoring the heat and the bitter taste. It was strong, exactly how he liked it. Foster stepped back into the mostly quiet office area, savoring each sip of his liquid gold. They had spent the better part of the previous day setting up a bunk area in the corner of the warehouse. A smattering of plastic sheds had been built, connected by a maze of extension cords so that fans and cooling units could be plugged in. Even though it was the fall, living in the desert was still warm, especially in a metal warehouse building that absorbed heat like a solar panel. The sheds looked almost comical lined up in rows, like a miniature suburban neighborhood built inside the massive space. But they worked. Each one provided privacy, a door that could close, a small space that felt almost normal. Some of the survivors had already personalized theirs, hanging clothes or setting up small makeshift furniture arrangements. As he sipped on his coffee, he heard noise coming from the front office, about 30 yards away. Voices, low and conversational. The sound carried through the quiet building. He walked towards it, his curiosity piqued, seeing that the light was on. The glow spilled out through the doorway into the darker main area. As he stepped into the doorway, he spotted Private Parker and Amanda sitting on either side of a white board, which had a lot of writing on it. Lists and diagrams covered the surface, marker in various colors. Some items had been crossed out, others circled for emphasis. "I'm not interrupting anything, am I?" Foster asked. Parker and Amanda both flinched at the sudden noise, jumping in their seats. The private nearly fell out of his chair, his arms windmilling for balance. The motion caused the young nurse to laugh, her hand covering her mouth. "No, Foster, you're good," Amanda said. "We're just in here spitballing ideas." Foster raised an eyebrow, taking another sip of his coffee as he studied them. Parker looked sheepish, while Amanda seemed energized despite the early hour. "Knowing Parker as well as I do, I'm almost afraid to ask what you're spitballing about," Foster said. "Well, Cap, neither of us could sleep, so we thought we'd try and come up with ideas for taking care of the zombie problem in the city," Parker explained. Amanda nodded, leaning forward in her chair. "We're probably the most fortunate people in the city right now, with a relatively safe space and enough food to last for months." but a lot of people aren't as fortunate as us, Amanda said. So we're tossing some ideas around on how to clear the city of those things so we can get to more people, Parker added. Foster walked further into the room, his eyes scanning the whiteboard. He could see the enthusiasm in their work, the genuine desire to help. Well, Parker, I can think of worse uses of your time, Foster said. He took another sip of his coffee as he stepped up to the whiteboard, reading over the ideas more carefully. Some were clearly jokes like, find a baseball team and give them bats, drawn with a stick figure holding a bat. Others were a little more serious. Trap them in buildings and burn them out, was written in Amanda's handwriting. Use cars as battering rams, was in Parker's scrawl. Foster's eyes landed on one that stood out from the rest. The word Outpost was written in capital letters, underlined twice. Tell me about the Outpost idea, Foster said. Parker gestured to Amanda, deferring to her. Amanda, that's all you, Parker said. The nurse stood up, moving to the board and tapping the word with her finger. Well, we know these things like sound, and they're not that smart. So if we could get survivors in well-defended buildings around town and crank up the music, we could lead those things right to the slaughter, Amanda explained. Foster thought about it for a moment, running the scenario through his head. Zombies drawn to sound, concentrated in one location. It would make them easier to take down, more efficient than hunting them street by street. He gave a solid nod in response. I like it, but I can see some issues with it. Like sooner or later, there will be too many bodies around the perimeter that will prevent more of those things getting close enough to be taken out, Foster said. Parker straightened in his chair, a grin crossing his face. I thought the same thing, but there are ways around that, Parker said. Such as? Foster asked. Amanda jumped back in, her excitement building. We may not have snowplows here in Vegas, but we could get some of those smaller earth movers from a construction site. Just have someone drive around the perimeter and push the bodies out of the way, Amanda said. Foster let the idea settle in his mind, considering the logistics. It would be messy work, brutal even, but it could work. The thought of actually making progress against the horde, of clearing sections of the city, was appealing. He took another drink of coffee, then nodded. I don't think that's the answer to all of our problems. But that might be a good way to thin their ranks. Keep thinking, though. Once everyone wakes up, start brainstorming more. Because you were right, the longer we take to clear the city, the more likely it is that people who are trapped won't make it, Foster said. Before they could continue, the cell phone on the desk began ringing. The sound cut through the conversation, loud in the small office. Parker reached over and hit the speaker button, the phone crackling to life. Is that you, Mike? Parker asked. Hey, Parker, Amanda. Sorry about that. I had to get through my morning ritual and grab some breakfast, Midnight Mike said. His voice sounded tired but upbeat, that radio DJ quality still present even this early. More ramen noodles today, Mike? Foster asked. There was a pause, then Mike let out a laugh. Hey, good morning, Captain. No, I ran out of ramen last night. However, the secretary for the station manager called in and told me where she had a stash of snacks hidden. So I am now the proud owner of 10 packs of peanut butter crackers, Mike said. That's the breakfast of champions right there, Foster replied. And lunch of champions and dinner of champions, Mike added. Mike trailed off into laughter, prompting the others to join in. The sound filled the small office, a moment of lightness in the darkness they were living through. So, Mike, do you have anything for us? Parker asked. Amazingly enough, I do, Parker. Foster, I know you told me to look for fighters, and I have a surprisingly lengthy list for you. However, the private and his friend there asked if I had anybody who's safe in a defensive position like you have there, Mike said. Foster gave Parker a curious look, one eyebrow raised. The young private smirked and shrugged. Like an outpost, huh? Foster asked. I'm not sure I put it exactly that manner, Parker said. What are you talking about, Parker? That was exactly how you put it, Mike replied. Parker's face fell slightly, his expression shifting to mock annoyance. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that, Parker said. His tone was dripping with sarcasm, which Mike picked up on immediately. Oh, I totally just made that up, Mike said. The room filled with laughter again, the tension breaking. Nice recovery there, Mike, Foster said. Yeah, not my best work, Mike admitted. Foster walked over to lean against the desk, his coffee cup resting in his hand. He was already thinking ahead, planning. "So what did you find?" Foster asked. "Well, Captain, there's a small gated community that's a few miles away from you. Their leader called in yesterday when I put out the call for fighters, and it seems like it has everything you're looking for," Mike explained. "Does this fighter have a name?" Foster asked. "Yeah, it's—" Mike paused. They could hear him ruffling through papers, the sound of him searching for the right note. "Okay, yeah, his name is Connor. He says he was a bodyguard for some high-profile people. I talked with him for a good little while. Seemed like he had a good head on his shoulders," Mike said. Foster filed the name away, already forming an impression. A bodyguard meant someone trained, someone who could stay calm under pressure. That was exactly what they needed. "And did you run this outpost idea by him?" Foster asked. He looked over to Parker, who nodded proudly at putting the idea into Mike's head. "I did indeed, and he seemed game. However, he did have a request," Mike said. "Of course he did." "Let's hear them," Foster replied. Nothing was ever simple anymore. Every deal came with conditions. Every alliance had a price. "He says he has some people in the neighborhood who can help, and he feels confident he can go out and pull in more survivors like you've been doing. But they're short on food and weapons," Mike explained. Foster thought about it for a moment, weighing what they could spare against what they might gain. An outpost would be valuable, another safe zone in the city, a place to stage operations from, to bring survivors to. And if this Connor had fighters, people willing to go out into the streets, that made the deal even sweeter. He finally nodded. "Okay, we can spare a little. Do me a favor, text me his number and I'll coordinate with him. See if we can't get over there to him once the sun comes up," Foster said. "You'll have the number as soon as we hang up." "Oh, and I do have one more thing for you," Mike said. "What is it, Mike?" Foster asked. "So, one of the people who called in happens to be a city maintenance worker who spent a lot of time in the tunnels. I'm working with him to come up with a map for you to get from where you are to up north where I am. Assuming you're still going to be bringing me some food," Mike said. Foster let out a small laugh, shaking his head. "I'd really prefer it if you'd find a helicopter pilot who can fly out here to the compound. But that's a good backup plan," Foster said. Mike let out a laugh before continuing. "I'll see what I can do, Captain." "I'll be in touch," Mike said. The line went dead, the connection cutting off with a soft click. Foster pocketed the phone just as Amanda got a big smile on her face. She leaped up and grabbed the marker, moving to the board. The other two watched her for a moment as she wrote in large letters, "Helicopter." "I'm not sure that qualifies as a plan," Foster said. Amanda turned back to them, still smiling. "No, but it's a great idea that could make another plan viable. I just wanted to write it down so I wouldn't forget about it," Amanda said. Foster nodded, taking another sip of his now cooling coffee. "Good enough for me," Foster said. Parker stood up from his chair, stretching his arms above his head. His back popped audibly. "Cap, do you want me to get the others up?" Parker asked. Foster thought about it for a moment, considering who he needed for this run. They'd been going hard since this whole thing started, and some of his men needed rest more than others. "Just Hanson and Cooper. I'm going to give Sullivan and Thomas a break today," Foster said. "I'll start a fresh pot of coffee and go get them up," Parker said. "Thanks, Parker. In the meantime, I'll give Connor a call and start planning out our day." Chapter 2. Captain Foster sat behind the wheel of their truck, driving slowly through the residential area that was a mile away from their target. The vehicle barely moved forward, crawling along at maybe 5 miles per hour. The slow pace gave him, Sergeant Hanson, Private Parker, and Private Cooper a chance to take in the scenery, to assess what they were dealing with. The neighborhood was middle class, modest homes with small yards and attached garages. It barely showed the scars of the war waging in the streets. Most of the houses looked untouched, their facades clean and undamaged. Lawn furniture still sat on patios. Cars remained parked in driveways. It could have been any quiet morning in suburbia if you didn't look too close. But then there were the others. Houses with blinds that had been knocked down, the windows dark and empty behind broken slats. Blood smeared on the glass in handprints and streaks, dried to a rust-brown color. Some front doors hung open, revealing nothing but shadows inside. They couldn't tell if creatures were inside still, or if they had broken out another way. The uncertainty was unsettling. Foster kept his speed steady, his eyes scanning both sides of the street. His hands gripped the wheel loosely, ready to react if something came charging out from between houses. The truck's engine was quiet, a low rumble that didn't carry far. Hansen rode shotgun, his window down halfway. He had one arm resting on the door, his eyes constantly moving. Every driveway, every gap between houses, every parked car got checked. Years of training had made the behavior automatic. In the back, Parker and Cooper stood with their hands on the sides of the truck bed. Their shotguns were within easy reach, propped against the cab. The garden shears they'd been using sat nearby, the blades dark with dried blood that had crusted in the joints. Foster stopped at the next intersection, his foot gentle on the brake. He looked both ways, checking for threats. The cross street stretched out in either direction, lined with more houses. 100 yards down on the left, they spotted a dozen creatures in the road. The zombies were clustered together, moving aimlessly. They hadn't taken notice of the truck yet, their attention focused on nothing in particular. "What do you think, Sarge? Should I let them know we're here?" Foster asked. Hansen studied the group of ghouls, his eyes narrowing as he tried to gauge their condition. They looked intact from this distance, no obvious injuries. "It's the only way we're going to know what we're up against." "Go for it," Hansen said. Foster gave the horn a quick honk, a single sharp blast that cut through the quiet morning air. The sound carried down the street, bouncing off the houses. Every zombie head snapped toward them in unison, that instant recognition of potential prey. There was a moment of fear inside the truck as two creatures broke into a sprint towards them, their bodies moving with that horrible speed. But their fears faded as they noticed the other 10 ghouls shambling in their direction. The slower creatures moved with jerky, uncoordinated steps. Their legs worked, but without the fluid motion they'd had before. It was like watching puppets with loose strings, bodies that didn't quite respond the way they should. "Well, would you look at that? 80% of them are moving at a snail's pace. Either that's the biggest coincidence in the history of the world, or..." Hansen trailed off. Foster finished the thought, a grim satisfaction in his voice. "Or these assholes are breaking down," Foster said. The runners were closing fast, maybe 50 yards out now. Foster gave a knock on the back window, rapping his knuckles against the glass to get the two privates' attention. Cooper turned, leaning down to hear better. "If you boys wouldn't mind taking care of those two runners, then we'll get back underway," Foster said. "Runners, huh? Is that what we're calling them?" Cooper asked. Foster shrugged, one hand still on the wheel. "I'm open to suggestions if you have a better name," Foster replied. Cooper thought about it for a moment, his brow furrowing. Then he shrugged and shook his head. "I was going to say sprinters, but that doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, especially if you're yelling," Cooper said. "I'll take your word on that, Private. Now, put them down and let's get moving," Foster ordered. Cooper and Parker each grabbed a bloody set of garden shears from the back of the truck bed. The tools were heavy in their hands, the weight reassuring. They waited patiently for the two ghouls to slam into the side of the truck, positioning themselves for the strikes. The runners hit the vehicle hard, the impact rocking it slightly. Their hands slapped against the metal sides, reaching up but unable to find purchase. The height of the truck bed kept them at bay, their fingers grasping at air. Once the creatures arrived, the two soldiers methodically put them down with forceful strikes to the tops of their heads. The shears punched through skull with sickening cracks, penetrating deep. Both zombies dropped simultaneously, their bodies crumpling to the pavement. "We're good, Cap," Parker reported. Foster let off the brakes, allowing the truck to begin rolling. He pressed the gas gently, accelerating away from the shambling horde that was still a good distance back. They continued driving down the streets, getting closer to the neighborhood. The slower zombies faded in the rearview mirror, their moans growing fainter. The captain stopped at another intersection, glancing up at the street signs to get his bearing. The metal posts were sun-faded, the letters still readable. Before driving off, he picked up the cell phone from the cup holder, scrolling to Connor's number and hitting dial. The action confused Hansen, who turned to look at him. "What are we doing?" Hansen asked. "Our new friend said to give him a call when we hit this cross street," Foster explained. He put the phone on speaker as a firm male voice came through. The voice was deep, confident, the kind of voice that commanded attention. "I take it you're close captain?" Connor asked. We're at the intersection you told us to call from, Foster confirmed. Excellent. Stay straight for 5 more blocks, then turn left. 2 blocks up from that, you'll see the fence of our community on the right. I'll be back there with ladders to get you over the top, while my men create a diversion at the front gate, Connor explained. His instructions were clear and precise, the mark of someone who'd thought through the logistics. Sounds good, Connor. We'll be there in 2, Foster said. The line clicked off, the connection ending. Foster pocketed the phone and hit the gas. They drove towards their next turn, the truck picking up speed slightly. The neighborhood looked clearer here, fewer signs of struggle. I think this guy is on the up and up, but stay frosty just in case, Foster said. Hanson nodded, his hand moving to his sidearm. He unlatched the holster with a soft click, his fingers resting on the grip. The action caused Foster to chuckle, the sound low in his throat. You still have bullets for that thing? Foster asked. 4 shots, not enough to mount a defense, but they don't know that, Hanson replied. Foster continued laughing as they made the next turn, the truck leaning slightly. The tires gripped the asphalt as they navigated the corner. As they approached the neighborhood, they could see a figure standing on top of a ladder in the distance. The man was waving them in, his arm moving in broad sweeps. As they got closer, details became clear. Connor was a large, physically fit man, wearing jeans and a t-shirt that was a size too small for him. The fabric stretched across his chest and shoulders, emphasizing the muscle underneath. His arms were thick, the kind you got from years of physical work or dedicated training. 3 more people stood beside him in the yard, watching the truck approach with a mixture of hope and wariness. Foster pulled the truck up alongside the fence, positioning it close enough for easy transfer of supplies. Hanson rolled down his window so that they could talk, the glass sliding down with a slight squeak. Yeah, did someone order some frozen pizzas and shotguns? Foster called out. Connor's face broke into a grin, his teeth white against his tanned skin. That's me all day, Connor replied. Both men cracked smiles, the tension breaking slightly. Foster and Hanson got out of the truck, their boots hitting the pavement. The 2 privates in the back lifted them up into the bed so that they could start handing over goods, strong hands gripping their arms and hauling them up. I'm Connor, and I can't thank you enough for coming all this way, Connor said. He extended his hand over the fence, his grip firm when Foster shook it. The handshake was solid, confident. And we appreciate you being willing to help us fight back, Foster replied. If we don't do it, who will, right? Connor said. The group took the next few minutes to hand over all the food and weapons over the fence. Cases of canned goods went first, then boxes of frozen pizzas still solid with cold. The shotguns were passed carefully, barrels first. Bags of shells followed, the weight of them substantial in their hands. Once everything was transferred, the soldiers made the jump over the fence. Foster went first, his hands gripping the chain link as he climbed. At the top, he swung his legs over carefully, then dropped down into the yard. His knees bent to absorb the impact. The others followed, landing one by one. After some brief introductions to Connor's people, names exchanged and hands shaken, the conversation continued. The men in Connor's group looked capable, fit, and alert. They handled the weapons with familiarity, checking the actions and testing the weight. So, there's about a week's worth of food there for you, 6 shotguns and 50 rounds each. There is more where that came from, but Foster trailed off. He saw Connor begin smirking, understanding already written on his face. But you want to make sure we're going to follow through. You don't have to explain it to me, Foster. I understand completely and would have done the exact same thing, Connor said. His tone carried no offense, just practical acknowledgement of the reality they were living in. Trust had to be earned now, not given freely. I'm glad we're on the same page, Foster said. We are, Foster, we are. And speaking of, what all did Mike tell you about our needs? Connor asked. Foster shifted his weight, his thumbs hooking into his vest. He said food and weapons, but didn't go into much more detail than that, Foster replied. Connor nodded, his expression becoming more serious. He glanced back at his people, then returned his attention to Foster. Okay, so I'll level with you. We're not entirely on board with your outpost plan because these fences aren't exactly the strongest things in the world. So, drawing a crowd isn't the best idea at the moment, Connor explained. Foster stared down the big man with a disappointing expression, his jaw setting. The whole point of coming out here was to establish the outpost, to get another position in the city. Connor must have seen the displeasure because he quickly put his hands up in a placating gesture. However, if you can help us get some sufficient transportation, I have enough capable people in here that we can get what we need to get to fortify this place. Might even be able to rescue a few people while we're at it, Connor said. Foster thought about it for a moment, weighing the revised plan. It wasn't what they'd discussed, but it made sense. No point in setting up an outpost if the defenses couldn't hold. He began nodding in agreement, the motion slow and thoughtful. Yeah, we can handle that. Cooper, would you mind staying behind and giving the defenses a once-over? Foster asked. You got it, Cap, Cooper replied. One of the men standing around Connor stepped forward. I'll show him around, Connor, Owen offered. Thank you, Owen, Connor said. Cooper hopped down from the truck bed, landing beside Owen. He adjusted his vest, checking that his gear was secure. What am I looking for exactly, Cap? Cooper asked. You know what we have in the warehouse. See if there's anything we don't need that they might have a use for, Foster explained. Cooper nodded and followed Owen as they walked off around the perimeter of the neighborhood. The two men disappeared around a row of houses, their voices fading as they discussed the fence line. Foster turned his attention back to Connor, his mind already moving to the next problem. So Connor, do you have an idea of where we might be able to find the vehicles you need? Foster asked. There's a dealership a mile away. Lots of trucks sitting out front, Connor said. Car dealership it is. Let's get loaded up and head out then. Chapter 3. Foster, Hanson, Parker, and Connor climbed the fence of the neighborhood, their boots finding purchase in the chain link. They scaled quickly, swinging over the top and dropping down to the truck, waiting on the other side. Hanson and Parker positioned themselves in the back of the bed, their shotguns within easy reach. The captain settled in behind the wheel as the bodyguard rode shotgun, pulling the door shut with a solid thunk. You navigate and I'll get us there, Foster said. Connor nodded, adjusting his seat to accommodate his larger frame. The springs creaked under his weight. Just head straight for a while, and I'll tell you when to turn. I figure you want to come up a side street rather than the main road, Connor said. That would be preferable. I know these things are slowing down, but too many of them can still be a problem, Foster replied. His hands found their familiar position on the wheel, fingers curling around the worn rubber grip. The truck had become an extension of him over the past few days, every quirk and response familiar. Yeah, I heard Mike mention that the zombies were slowing down. Any idea what's causing it? Connor asked. At this point, I don't know and I don't care, just as long as it keeps happening, Foster said. Amen to that, Connor agreed. Foster hit the gas and they picked up speed down the residential streets. He kept it modest, maybe 30 miles per hour. There wasn't a need to go fast, at least not yet. The morning sun was climbing higher, warming the cab through the windshield. The duo in the front continued talking as they drove, the conversation filling the space between them. Behind them, Parker and Hanson stood watch, their eyes scanning the houses and yards they passed. So, Mike said you were a bodyguard? Foster asked. Connor shifted in his seat, his arm resting on the doorframe through the open window. Yeah, been doing it for a number of years. It's not glamorous work, but it pays the bills. Well, it paid the bills. I'm starting to think I'm not going to have to worry about my next credit card payment, Connor said. Foster let out a short laugh, shaking his head at the thought. I wouldn't jinx yourself there, Connor. Those companies are ruthless. Some middle manager probably has zombified agents chained to their desk, Foster replied. The mental image was absurd enough that both men let out laughs. As they laughed, Connor pointed ahead, his finger indicating the upcoming intersection. Turn here. Should be a mile up on the right, Connor said. Foster nodded and made the turn, the truck leaning slightly as they navigated the corner. They continued driving through the neighborhood, their speed steady. The houses here looked similar to the ones they'd passed before, some intact, others showing signs of violence. They looked around as they went, spotting zombies wandering everywhere. The creatures moved through yards, stood in driveways, shuffled down sidewalks. As they paused at the next intersection, Connor looked over to a house on his right. A zombie was pressed up against the living room window, thrashing about. Its hands slapped against the glass, leaving smears. The creature's face was contorted, mouth open in that endless moan. Connor let out a sigh at the image, his expression darkening. "Are you good, Connor?" Foster asked. The bodyguard was quiet for a moment, his eyes still fixed on the zombie in the window. When he spoke, his voice carried weight. "Yeah, it's just—" Connor trailed off. He seemed to be searching for the right words, struggling with something. Foster waited, knowing sometimes people needed space to get their thoughts out. "I understand the desire, the need to fight back. I'm on board with it, and I'll go down swinging, but it feels daunting, you know? There's what? 1 million of those things in the city. How do you even begin to tackle that?" Connor asked. Foster remained silent for a moment before responding. It was a fair question, one he'd asked himself more than once. The math was overwhelming when you thought about it too hard. 6 soldiers against a city full of the dead. The odds were impossible. One head strike at a time. The Outpost plan is just a start, though. We're working on ideas on how to clear out the bulk of those things from the city, Foster said. Connor turned to look at him, genuine interest in his expression. "So, what's your best idea so far?" Connor asked. Foster let out a chuckle, the sound dry and humorless. He kept his eyes on the road as he responded. "Find a baseball team and give them bats," Foster said. Connor sat there for a moment, his face completely neutral. He stared at the captain, processing what he'd just heard. The silence stretched out, becoming almost uncomfortable before Connor spoke. "I'm guessing you're still early in the planning stages?" Connor asked. "Yeah, you could say that," Foster admitted. Both men sat in silence for a moment, the absurdity of the situation settling over them. Then, almost simultaneously, they broke into laughter. Real laughter this time, the kind that came from acknowledging just how screwed they were and deciding to laugh about it anyway. "Well, if I come up with any better ideas, which doesn't sound like it's going to be that hard to do, I'll let you know," Connor said, still grinning. "Please do, we're making this up as we go along," Foster replied. Before Connor could respond, Foster slammed on the brakes. The truck lurched to a stop in the middle of the road, tires squealing briefly. The sudden deceleration threw Hansen and Parker forward in the bed, both men catching themselves against the cab. They looked ahead, eyes fixed on a point 2 blocks down. A dozen creatures stood in the road, clustered together in a loose group. Their bodies swayed as they moved, that unsteady shambling motion. None of the ghouls appeared to be moving all that quickly, their legs working but without coordination. "Let me guess, that's where the dealership is?" Foster asked. Connor leaned forward, squinting to see better. He nodded slowly. "Yep. Guess something is there that has their attention," Connor said. Foster stared ahead for a few moments, trying to take in the scene. He looked towards the edge of the parking lot, visible beyond the zombies. A handful of cars sat at the perimeter, their paint jobs gleaming in the sun. He was trying to see if there were more zombies coming out from the lot itself, but couldn't spot any movement, just the dozen in the road. The captain reached back, knocking on the window to get Hansen and Parker's attention. The sergeant leaned down, his face appearing in the frame. "Looks like we have some company up there," Hansen observed. "We need to get a look at the lot." "Do you two feel like cracking some skulls?" Foster asked. Hansen glanced back at Parker, who nodded without hesitation. The sergeant turned back to Foster. "Get us close and we'll do the rest," Hansen confirmed. Before Foster could hit the gas, Connor opened his door. The hinges creaked as it swung wide, the bodyguard already moving to get out. "Where are you going?" Foster asked. Connor paused, one foot already out of the truck. He looked back at the captain with a slight smile. "I'm jumping in the back to help out." "I pull my weight, Captain," Connor said. Foster nodded to the large bodyguard, respect showing in his expression. Connor slammed the door and jumped into the back of the truck, his boots hitting the bed with a heavy thud. As soon as his feet hit the bed, Parker reached down and grabbed something from beside him. He came up holding a metal baseball bat, offering it handle first to Connor. "Batter up," Parker said. Connor took the bat, testing the weight with a few practice swings. The metal whooshed through the air. He nodded his approval, gripping it with both hands. The 3 men took a knee, getting situated and bracing themselves. Their bodies were positioned for balance, ready to move and strike. Foster waited until they were set, then hit the gas. The truck accelerated, engine noise growing louder as they picked up speed. The sound drew the attention of the zombies in the road immediately. Their heads turned in unison, dead eyes fixing on the approaching vehicle. One of them broke into a sprint, its body moving with that frightening speed that marked it as a runner. The creature left the shamblers behind, its legs pumping as it charged toward the truck. Its arms were outstretched, hands grasping at nothing. Foster sped up, his jaw set. He got the runner lined up with the passenger side headlight, adjusting his steering with small movements. The timing had to be perfect. The truck hit the zombie hard, the impact solid and bone-crushing. The creature flew backward, its body ragdolling through the air before hitting the pavement. The impact barely slowed the vehicle down, but obliterated the zombie. Its skull cracked open like an egg, contents spilling across the asphalt. Foster let off the gas and applied the brakes gently, slowing to a crawl just before reaching the shamblers. The truck rolled forward at maybe 2 miles per hour. He sat there, engine idling, waiting for the creatures to reach them. They were just a few yards away, shuffling forward with arms raised. He studied their movements, clinical interest overriding disgust. He could see that their legs didn't work all that well anymore. The joints seemed stiff, the muscles unresponsive. They could still move, still walk, but the ability to run was completely gone. It was like watching people trying to walk on legs that had fallen asleep. The coordination, just not there. A couple of them pressed up against the driver's side door for a moment, their hands slapping against the metal. Foster sat still, watching them through the window. Then Connor clanked his metal baseball bat against the side of the truck, the sound ringing out sharp and loud. The noise got their attention immediately, the zombies turning toward the new stimulus. Foster looked in the side mirror, watching the scene unfold behind him. The ghouls shambled toward the back of the truck, reaching up with grasping hands. Connor stood and swung hard, bringing the bat down on the first skull. The metal connected with a wet crack, the zombie's head caving in. It dropped instantly. Hansen and Parker joined in, using their garden shears to punch through skulls. The tools worked efficiently, blades driving deep with each strike. The 3 men worked methodically, putting down each zombie as it came within range. The entire ordeal took a couple of minutes, zombies shambling around the truck only to be put down. Bodies littered the street around them, dark blood pooling on the pavement. Once the last one dropped, Foster hit the gas again. He drove to the edge of the lot, navigating past the bodies and heading toward the back of the dealership. The building was large, modern-looking, with lots of glass. He parked near the maintenance garages at the rear, pulling into a spot between 2 rows of vehicles. A few zombies were visible in the back lot, moving slowly through the lines of cars, and there was a partially open bay door, the metal rolled up about 3 feet. Foster cut the engine, leaving the keys in the ignition as he got out. His boots hit the pavement, the sound echoing across the lot. As soon as his feet touched ground, Connor jumped down beside him. The bodyguard handed the captain another bat from the back. "Let's go crack some skulls," Connor said. Foster took the bat, feeling the weight. It was solid, well-balanced. He nodded, and the 2 of them walked towards the shamblers. The zombies were having trouble walking down the narrow path through the lines of cars, their bodies bumping against vehicles and getting caught between them. The tight space worked to the humans' advantage. "Parker, Hansen, make sure the entrance is clear," Foster ordered. The 2 soldiers nodded and walked over to the bay door to clear it. They moved carefully, shotguns up and ready. Foster and Connor each took a side of the path, jumping onto the hoods of sedans parked in neat rows. The metal dented slightly under their boots as they walked across the vehicles, using them as a platform to get above the zombies. Connor struck first, bringing the bat down hard onto the top of a creature's skull. The impact was brutal, the zombie's head caving in with a wet crunch. The body dropped as Foster walked past him, already targeting the next one in line. The duo worked in unison for a solid minute, putting down half a dozen zombies with ease. Their movements were coordinated without needing words. Bats swung, skulls cracked, bodies fell. After clearing the immediate area, they looked back to the open garage bay door. Parker and Hansen stood there, waving them in with urgent gestures. Something was wrong. Foster could read it in their body language. Foster and Connor ran over to the door, their boots pounding on the pavement. As they got closer, Foster noticed that Parker had his shotgun at the ready, the weapon held tight against his shoulder. His finger was on the trigger guard, ready to move. "We got trouble, Cap," Parker said. Foster's expression hardened, his mind already running through scenarios. "What are we dealing with?" Foster asked. Hansen gestured toward the interior of the building, visible through the bay door opening. Somebody busted out the front window of the showroom, so those things are roaming around everywhere, Hansen explained. Foster could see movement beyond the door now, shadows shifting in the darker interior. Multiple zombies, maybe a dozen or more. The showroom was compromised, which meant the entire building could be crawling with them. Is it something that we can handle? Foster asked. Hansen glanced back into the building, assessing. Then he looked at Foster and nodded. Yeah, but we're going to have to be quick about it, Hansen said. Parker's expression shifted to something almost eager, the adrenaline starting to pump. He had that look soldiers got before action, focused and ready. A little hit and run never hurt anybody, Parker said. Foster turned to Connor, meeting the bodyguard's eyes. He needed to know the man was committed, that he wouldn't freeze when things got intense. Connor, are you game? Foster asked. Connor gripped his bat tighter, his knuckles whitening. His jaw was set, determination clear in his expression. Like the man said, a little hit and run never hurt anybody, Connor replied. Foster nodded, satisfied with the response. He adjusted his grip on his own bat, feeling the weight one more time. All right, let's get it done then. Chapter 4. Foster led the group into the garage area of the building, his bat held ready at shoulder height. Hansen was right behind him, moving with that careful efficiency that came from years of training. Connor motioned for Parker to go next, gesturing with his free hand, but the private shook his head, raising his shotgun slightly to emphasize his point. If things go bad and we need to make a fast escape, I'll have that path cleared for us, Parker said. His voice was low, barely above a whisper. The logic was sound. Someone needed to watch their backs, and Parker with his shotgun was the best choice for rear guard. Connor didn't argue, simply nodding and falling into line behind the other two soldiers. Each of the three men at the front of the line had their bats at the ready, the metal weapons gripped tight in their hands. The soldiers had their shotguns slung over their shoulders, the straps digging into their vests. The long guns would be too loud unless absolutely necessary. They swept the garage area as they moved up to the showroom portion of the building. Their boots were quiet on the concrete floor, each step measured and deliberate. Work bays stretched out on either side, cars up on lifts with their hoods open, tools hung on pegboards, organized and unused. Everything had that abandoned quality, like the workers had just walked away mid-shift. They could see movement on the other side of the window ahead, shapes shifting in the brighter light of the showroom, several zombies shambling about, their bodies moving with that uncoordinated gait. The glass separating them was large, maybe 8 feet tall and twice as wide. Through it they could see the waiting room beyond, chairs arranged in neat rows. They took cover behind the last car before reaching the door, crouching low. The vehicle was a sedan up on a lift, providing good concealment. Foster pressed his back against the cold metal, catching his breath. All right, does anybody have any clue where they're going to keep the keys for the new trucks out front? Foster asked. Connor leaned around the edge of the lift, trying to get a better view of the interior layout. He'd been in enough dealerships over the years to have a general idea. I'm pretty sure they're going to be locked up in or around the manager's office, Connor said. Hansen shifted position, his eyes scanning what he could see of the showroom. What kind of lock are we dealing with? Hansen asked. Connor shrugged, his shoulder lifting slightly. Might be a key, might be a combination, but I'm willing to bet that either could be opened by Parker here, Connor said. He nodded towards the shotgun in Parker's hands. The implication was clear. When all else fails, blow the lock. But Parker's expression soured at the suggestion, his mouth turning down. Sounds like a great way to get trapped in a car dealership. Look out there, those assholes are everywhere, Parker said. Connor's jaw tightened, frustration creeping into his voice. We need the trucks though. Surely there's got to be a way, Connor replied. Hansen stayed low as he broke from cover, moving quickly but carefully. He ran up to the window that separated the garage from the showroom, staying out of the direct line of sight of the creatures on the other side. The other men watched in confusion as he positioned himself, his body pressed against the wall. He was behind where the checkout desk would be, visible through the glass. The desk sat on the showroom side, positioned for customers to complete paperwork. Hansen poked his head up, just enough to see over the bottom edge of the window, his eyes scanning the area. His attention focused on the clear folders sitting in a file holder on the desk. Each one of the half-dozen folders was stuffed with paperwork, the kind customers signed when picking up their vehicles. And clipped to each folder was a set of keys, the metal glinting in the light, filtering through the broken front window. The sergeant nodded to himself in satisfaction, a small smile crossing his face. He'd found what they needed. He retreated back to the others, moving quickly and keeping low. When he rejoined the group, Foster was staring at him with a mixture of confusion and irritation. "What the hell was that about, Hanson?" Foster asked. The sergeant's expression was almost smug, clearly proud of his deductive reasoning. "I had a thought, so I went for it," Hanson said. He trailed off, waiting for them to ask. The pause stretched out, becoming almost theatrical. Parker rolled his eyes, his patience wearing thin. "Well, are you going to share with the rest of the class, or do we need to start guessing?" Parker asked. Hanson's smile widened slightly. "Most people drop their cars off and pick them up later. By my count, there's a half dozen in the done column in there, so we grab those and hope one of the ones back here does the trick," Hanson explained. Foster looked over to Connor, gauging the bodyguard's reaction. Connor was contemplating the idea, his brow furrowed as he thought through the logistics. Eventually he shrugged, the gesture non-committal. "We have to get by that group anyway, so it can't hurt to see if there's something we can use," Connor said. Hanson clapped his hands together softly, the sound muted. "Now we're talking," Hanson said. Foster turned back to the windows, peering through carefully to the waiting room beyond. He counted nearly a dozen zombies within view, their bodies scattered throughout the space. They stood between the door and the desk, shambling aimlessly. And God only knows how many more were just beyond his line of sight, deeper in the building or in the offices. He looked around the mechanics bay, his eyes searching for something useful. His gaze landed on a heavy metal jack on wheels that sat just off to the side, positioned near one of the work bays. The jack was industrial-sized, meant for lifting trucks and heavy vehicles. It had to weigh at least 200 pounds. "All right, this is what we're doing. Sarge, you're with me. We're going to prop that door open and get those things in here. We take them down as quietly as we can, grab the keys, and take it from there," Foster said. The three others nodded in agreement, understanding the plan without needing further explanation. Draw the zombies into the garage where they had more room to maneuver, thin the herd, then make a quick grab for the keys. Foster moved over to grab the heavy jack, gripping the handle and testing the wheels. It rolled smoothly, the bearings well maintained. He positioned it so that it was parallel with the door, ready to be shoved into place. Hanson moved over to the door itself, staying low and out of sight of the window. He gripped the handle, waiting for the signal. Foster gave the sergeant a nod, his jaw set. Hanson unlocked the door with a soft click and pulled it open, the hinges moving smoothly. As soon as the door swung wide, Foster stayed low and pushed hard on the jack. The wheels rolled forward with a metallic rumble, creating noise as he slid it into place to keep the door propped open. The captain barely had time to look up before movement exploded from inside the waiting room. Two zombies came at him fast, too fast. They ran at full speed, their legs pumping with that terrifying coordination. His heart jumped into his throat as he saw them, fully expecting to be greeted with shamblers instead of runners. "Shit!" Foster yelled out. The panic in his tone was real, undisguised. He tried to back up, his legs pushing against the floor, but being low to the ground worked against him, his center of gravity all wrong. The sudden, unexpected movement threw off his balance, causing him to fall backwards. His bat clattered to the concrete as his arms windmilled. Before he could scramble back to his feet, a shotgun blast erupted from behind him. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, echoing off the metal walls. The lead zombie's head exploded, the skull coming apart in a spray of bone and tissue. The body dropped mid-stride, momentum carrying it forward to skid across the floor. Parker quickly racked another shell, the action smooth and practiced. The spent casing ejected with a metallic clink, bouncing on the concrete. He fired again, the second blast taking down the other runner. Silence fell in the garage, broken only by the excited moans of shamblers in the next room. The creatures had heard the noise, were drawn to it. Foster looked back to Parker, meeting the private's eyes. He gave him a nod of thanks. "Hanson, grab those keys!" Foster shouted. The sergeant didn't hesitate. He darted around the open door, pushing through into the waiting room. His boots hit the tile floor with purpose. A zombie was right there, reaching for him with dead hands. Hansen swung his bat immediately, putting his whole body into it. The metal connected with the side of the zombie's head, the impact solid. The skull caved in with a wet crunch, and the creature dropped to the ground in a heap. He turned and looked towards the desk, assessing the distance. It was a few yards from him, maybe 10 feet. But 2 zombies were between him and his target, both shambling toward the commotion. Hansen picked up speed, building momentum. He gripped his bat like a lance, holding it out in front of him. He planted the end of the bat firmly into the lead creature's chest and drove forward with his legs. The zombie stumbled backward from the force, unable to keep its footing. It collided with the one behind it, both bodies tangling. They fell hard to the ground in a mess of limbs. Hansen jumped over them, his boots barely clearing their grasping hands. He landed on the other side and reached out, grabbing onto the stack of clear folders in the finished file. His fingers closed around them, pulling them free from the holder. Papers shifted inside the plastic sleeves. He turned immediately, not wasting a second. The 2 zombies on the ground were already trying to get up, their movements uncoordinated but persistent. Hansen jumped again, launching himself over their bodies. He felt the tips of fingers scrape against the bottom of his boots, the contact light, but close, too close. But he managed to clear them, landing in a crouch. Foster was standing just in front of the door, swinging his bat like a man possessed. He'd recovered his weapon and was cracking skulls left and right, sending creatures to the ground with each impact. Bodies were piling up, making the approach more difficult for the others. But more were coming, drawn by the noise and movement. Hansen called out as he approached, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I got them, let's move!" Hansen shouted. He rushed through the door, still clutching the folders. With his free hand, he grabbed onto the jack and pulled it out of the way, his muscles straining with the effort. The heavy metal scraped across the floor. He kept holding the door open with his body, looking back at Foster. He let out a sharp whistle, trying to get the captain to move faster. Foster continued defending their escape one bat swing at a time, his arms pumping. Each swing connected, each impact dropped a zombie. But the horde was building, more creatures pressing forward. Finally, the captain thrust his bat forward into the chest of a creature in the middle of the growing pack. The blow wasn't meant to kill, just to create space. The zombie tumbled backward, its body colliding with the others behind it. The tangle of limbs bought precious seconds. Foster turned and jumped through the door, clearing the threshold. Hansen pushed it shut right after. Throwing his weight against the metal, the door slammed closed with a solid thunk, cutting off the reaching hands on the other side. Hansen dropped to one knee, pressing his shoulder into the door and holding it closed. The creatures on the other side pressed against it immediately, their combined weight pushing back. The door rattled in its frame, the pressure building. It took him a moment of straining before he was able to throw the lock, his fingers fumbling with the mechanism. The deadbolt slid home with a satisfying click, sealing the creatures on the other side. Hansen backed away from the door, breathing hard. He looked through the window at the scene beyond. A dozen zombies were pressed against the glass and door, all trying to get through. Their hands slapped against the surfaces, leaving smears. Behind them were 50 more creatures drawn to the noise, most of them shambling towards the waiting room. But a handful of them ran at full speed, weaving between the slower ones. "Yeah, there's no way in hell we were getting to the manager's office," Hansen said. His breathing was heavy, adrenaline still pumping through his system. Foster nodded in agreement, his own chest heaving. "Then we better hope there's something in there that works for us," Foster said. Hansen nodded and joined Foster in walking back to the others, putting distance between them and the door. The sergeant distributed the keys to the men as they moved to the open bay door, handing out folders to each person. Parker took his, Connor grabbed another, Foster took a third. One by one, they hit the key fobs, pressing the unlock buttons. They watched as lights on various vehicles flashed in response, the electronic chirps echoing through the garage. The first 2 they hit were older sedans, compact cars that wouldn't work for their needs. Too small, not enough cargo space. The next 2, however, were large vehicles. One was a white SUV, the kind families use for road trips. It had 3 rows of seating visible through the windows. The other was a massive pickup truck, lifted with oversized tires. The truck bed was enormous, easily big enough to haul supplies. "Well, Connor, do you have a preference?" Foster asked. The bodyguard looked between the two vehicles, assessing their potential. His eyes moved from one to the other, weighing options. Then he shook his head. "Honestly, I could use both. We've come this far. We might as well get everything we can," Connor said. Foster nodded, the logic sound. He grabbed the keys from Hansen, the metal jangling as he separated them. He tossed the SUV keys over to Connor, who caught them easily. He looked at Parker, who was holding the keys to the pickup truck. "Parker, you're driving. Hansen, ride with Connor," Foster ordered. The two soldiers nodded their understanding, already moving toward their assigned vehicles. But before they could head out, Connor spoke up, his voice carrying a hint of hesitation. "Foster, can I make a request?" Connor said. Foster paused, turning to look at the bodyguard. Connor's expression was serious, almost pleading. "What's on your mind?" Foster asked. Connor shifted his weight, the keys in his hand. "One of the men in the neighborhood has a daughter that works nights at a bar, and he hasn't heard from her since this began. It's just a slight detour on the way back," Connor explained. Foster contemplated for a moment, running the math in his head. Another stop meant more risk, more exposure, but it also meant potentially saving someone, giving a father peace of mind. He thought about all the people they had already pulled from danger, how each rescue had been worth it. Finally, he nodded. "We can do a drive-by," Foster said. Relief washed over Connor's face, his shoulders dropping slightly. "Thank you, Foster," Connor said. Foster waved off the thanks, already moving toward his truck. "All right, let's hit the bar." Chapter 5. Connor drove his brand new truck down the residential street with Hansen riding shotgun. The vehicle handled smoothly, the suspension absorbing the occasional pothole with ease. Parker was behind the wheel of the borrowed SUV, following at a safe distance. Foster brought up the rear of their group in the original truck, maintaining the convoy formation. They moved at a steady speed down the streets, maybe 25 miles per hour. Zombies shambled around on sidewalks and in yards, their movements slow and uncoordinated. But they weren't in concerning numbers, just scattered individuals here and there, nothing that required stopping or engaging. The neighborhood they were passing through was similar to the others they'd seen. Working-class homes with small yards, chain-link fences separating properties. Some houses looked lived in, others abandoned. A few had broken windows or doors hanging open, dark interiors revealing nothing. It took a few minutes of driving before Connor slowed to a stop at an intersection. His foot eased off the gas, the truck rolling to a halt. A handful of zombies were visible in a neighboring yard to their right, maybe 5 or 6 of them. They were struggling to push through a backyard fence, their bodies pressed against the wood. But the fence wasn't giving at all, the posts planted deep and secure. "What's the problem?" Hansen asked. Connor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked down the street to his left, his eyes focusing on something in the distance. He pointed to a 2-story building a couple blocks down. The structure was nestled into a small business district in the middle of the neighborhood, surrounded by other low-rise commercial buildings. The bar stood out from its neighbors, the facade painted a dark color with a neon sign above the door that was now dark. There were a handful of zombies clamoring around the front door, maybe 6 or 7 of them. Their bodies pressed against the entrance, hands slapping against the wood. But they were unable to get inside, the door holding firm. "That's the bar right there, and it looks like someone might be inside," Connor said. He turned and looked at Hansen, his expression asking a silent question. The desire to help was clear in his eyes, the need to check if anyone was trapped. Hansen looked down the street, assessing the situation. He studied the zombies, counting them and checking their movements. It was just a handful of them, nothing they couldn't handle. With a nod, he grabbed the radio clipped to his vest, clicking it on. Static crackled before he spoke. "Hey, Cap, we have the bar in sight and there's a few zombies out front. We might have survivors inside," Hansen reported. There was a long pause before the response came. Foster was likely weighing the risks, considering their position and resources. The radio crackled again. "Hansen, you and Connor deal with them. Parker, you cover the front and I'll cover the rear. At the first sign of trouble, we're out. Is that clear?" Foster said. His tone left no room for argument. This was a quick in and out, nothing more. "You got it, Cap." The only trouble is going to be Connor and I cracking skulls, Hansen replied. He extended his fist for a bump, holding it out toward Connor. The bodyguard grinned and reciprocated, their knuckles connecting. Hansen clipped the radio back to his vest before reaching down and grabbing his bat from between his feet. The metal was cold in his hand, the grip wrapped in tape for better purchase. "All right, let's go take them down," Hansen said. Connor nodded and hit the gas, making the turn onto the side street. He sped towards the front of the bar, the engine noise growing louder as he accelerated. He wanted to make sure the sound was loud enough to draw the zombies' attention, to test if there were any runners within their ranks. It was a gamble, but a calculated one. Much to his relief, all of the ghouls in front of the bar turned and shambled in their direction. Their movements were slow, uncoordinated, heads swiveled toward the approaching vehicle, arms raising. But no sprinting, no sudden bursts of speed. Just the steady, shambling approach. The bodyguard slammed on the brakes a good 5 yards in front of the mob. The tires squealed briefly, the truck rocking on its suspension as it came to a stop. The distance gave him and the sergeant plenty of room to get out and get into an attack position before having to engage. No rushing, no panic. Both doors opened simultaneously, Connor and Hansen exiting with their bats ready. They moved with purpose, closing the distance to the shambling horde. The zombies were still several yards away, their slow pace working against them. Connor rushed forward first, his legs pumping. He took aim at the largest zombie in the group, a creature almost as big as he was. The thing had been a heavy man in life, easily 250 pounds. With a forceful swing, Connor connected with the face of the ghoul. The bat hit with a wet crunch, the skull caving in. The zombie's head snapped to the side from the impact, its body following. It dropped to the ground with a heavy thud. Hansen had little trouble with his first zombie, bringing his bat up and then down in an overhead strike. The metal connected with the top of its head, penetrating deep. The creature's legs gave out instantly, collapsing like a puppet with cut strings. He stepped over the body, already targeting the next one. He delivered another forceful strike to the next in line, putting it down in the same efficient manner as the first. The two men worked together, covering each other's blind spots. When Connor engaged one on the left, Hansen took the right. Their movements were coordinated without needing words, each strike deliberate and effective. Bats swung, skulls cracked, bodies dropped. The entire exercise took less than a minute, with the two men putting down every creature outside the bar. The bodies lay in heaps on the pavement, dark blood pooling beneath them. Connor and Hansen stood there for a moment, breathing hard but not exhausted. They looked around, checking for more threats. But the street was clear. Hansen wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, then motioned towards the front door of the bar. "It's the moment of truth. Do you want to do the honors?" Hansen asked. Connor paused for a moment, studying the door. It was solid wood, painted black with years of wear showing around the edges. Then he stepped up to it, gripping his bat in one hand. He knocked on the door in a rhythmic manner, 3 quick raps followed by 2 slower ones. He wanted to make sure he sounded different than the mindless zombie banging that had been happening before. A few seconds passed, tension building. Then they heard a voice coming from the other side, muffled but audible through the wood. "Hello? Is somebody out there?" a male voice called. Connor's face lit up at the sound, relief washing over his features. Someone was alive in there. "Yes, sir. My name is Connor, and my friends and I are here to help," Connor replied, raising his voice to be heard. "Come over to the window so I can get a look at you," the voice said. Connor and Hansen spotted a small window a few yards to the right of the door. It was set low in the wall, maybe waist height, the kind bars used for serving drinks to patios or taking orders. A moment later, the window slid open from the inside, the glass pane moving smoothly. A middle-aged man appeared on the other side, leaning down to peer out at them. His face was weary, deep lines etched around his eyes and mouth. His hair was disheveled, clothes rumpled. It was clear he had been through an ordeal, probably hadn't slept much in the past few days. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, what in the holy hell are you doing out here on the streets?" the man asked. His tone carried equal parts disbelief and relief, like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. "My friends and I decided it was time to take back the city," Connor said. The man's eyes narrowed slightly, studying Connor's face. Then they flicked to Hansen, taking in the military uniform and vest. He seemed to be assessing whether they were real or some stress-induced hallucination. "And you started with my bar?" "I'm touched, but a little suspicious at the same time," the man said. Connor shook his head, a small smile crossing his face. "I'm holed up in a gated community not too far from here. One of the families has a daughter who works here." "Miranda," Connor explained. The man's face dropped a bit, his expression shifting to something troubled. He seemed unsure of how to deliver whatever news he had. Connor felt his stomach clench, dreading the worst. "Oh no, is she—" Connor trailed off. He couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't say the word, but he saw the man shaking his head quickly, hands coming up in a placating gesture. "No, she's not dead. At least, I don't think she is. We had some trouble in the bar the night all this started, and she tried to make a run for it. She dropped her keys but managed to get into the car before those people swarmed over it. She's still in the back lot as we speak," the man explained. His name was Earl, Connor would learn later, the bar owner who'd been trapped inside with his remaining customers for the past few days. "Well, let's go get her then," Connor said. Hansen clicked on the radio, bringing it to his mouth. "Hey, Cap, we got a survivor trapped in a car in the back lot. We're going to go take care of it," Hansen reported. The response came back quickly, Foster's voice steady. "Let me know if you need a hand." "We'll keep watch," Foster said. Hansen gave Connor a nod, the silent communication clear. They were going in. The bodyguard straightened, gripping his bat tighter as he shifted into fight mode. "Can we cut through your bar?" Connor asked, looking back at Earl. Earl shook his head, regret clear in his expression. "I'm sorry, and I swear it's not because I don't trust you, but those doors are shut. We have those things chained up and wooden planks from the bar nailed into it. It would take us an hour to dismantle it," Earl explained. Connor chuckled, understanding completely. "You didn't tear down defenses just because someone knocked. Not in this world." "It's all good old-timer. We can hike it," Connor said. Earl pointed toward the side of the building, his arm extending through the window. "It's just around the corner there. The gate to the parking lot is open," Earl said. "We'll be right back," Connor replied. Connor and Hansen rested the bloody bats on their shoulders as they walked around the side of the building. The metal was sticky against their shirts, the dried blood flaking off with movement. As they rounded the corner, they immediately heard the moaning coming from the rear parking lot. The sound was distinct, multiple voices creating that awful chorus. As they got to the corner of the building, they looked into the fenced-in lot, taking in the scene. 10 zombies were swarming around a sedan parked at the far end, maybe 30 yards away. The car was a compact, dark-colored, with bodies pressed against every surface. Their hands slapped against the windows, searching for entry points. Hansen turned and motioned to the others in their vehicles, waving them forward. Parker and Foster pulled up, positioning their trucks to cover the street. The bat-wielding duo walked to the entrance of the lot, reaching for the chain-link gate that hung open. They grabbed onto the metal and pulled it shut, the gate swinging closed with them inside. The metal clattered against the frame as the latch caught, the sound echoing across the lot. The noise drew the attention of the zombies by the car immediately, their heads snapping toward the source. Every one of the ghouls moaned excitedly, the sound building in volume. Most began shambling towards the gate, their movements slow but determined. Connor and Hansen readied their bats, preparing for the engagement. But one zombie didn't shamble. It broke out into a sprint, its legs pumping hard. The runner closed the distance fast, catching Hansen off guard. His eyes widened, hand reaching instinctively for his sidearm on his hip. Connor reacted faster, letting out a violent scream as he darted forward to meet the speedy threat. His voice was primal, fueled by adrenaline and the need to protect. He closed the gap in seconds, lowering his shoulder at the last moment. He plowed through the chest of the smaller zombie with his full body weight behind the impact. The creature was maybe 130 pounds, no match for Connor's mass and momentum. The zombie was sent flying backward, its feet leaving the ground before it crashed to the pavement hard. Connor was on it immediately, bringing his bat down in a forceful strike to its forehead. The skull caved in, blood splattering up into the bodyguard's face. Dark droplets hit his cheeks and chin, warm and wet. He looked up to the rest of the mob, his expression fierce. "All right, let's have some fun," Connor said. His voice carried an edge, the battle rush taking over. Hansen joined him, moving up to his side. The two men stood shoulder to shoulder as the shambling horde approached. Connor and Hansen spent the next couple of minutes methodically dispatching the creatures one by one. The small numbers of shamblers were no threat to the well-trained duo. Each zombie shambled forward only to have its skull cracked open with efficient strikes. Left, right, overhead, each swing found its mark. Before too long, the parking lot was littered with corpses. Bodies lay scattered across the asphalt, some piled on top of each other where they'd fallen. The air smelled of death and copper, thick and cloying. Connor stepped over the bodies, making his way to the car. He looked inside through the rear window, spotting a young woman laying in the back seat. She was curled up in a fetal position, her arms wrapped around herself. He gave a slight knock on the window with his knuckles, 3 soft taps. The woman startled violently, her body jerking. She sat up quickly, her hair disheveled and eyes wide with fear. She looked at Connor through the glass, taking in the blood on his face and the bat in his hand. She rubbed her eyes, as if she couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. Like, maybe she was hallucinating from exhaustion and dehydration. "Are you Miranda?" Connor asked, his voice muffled through the glass. The young woman nodded slowly, confused as to how this stranger knew her name. Her brow furrowed, questions clear in her expression. "Your father has been worried about you." "I can take you home if you wish," Connor said. Miranda's face transformed instantly. A big smile broke across her features, genuine and relieved. She nodded frantically, the motion almost desperate. A few tears rolled down her face, leaving clean tracks through the grime on her cheeks. The emotion was raw, overwhelming. Hansen stepped over to the bodyguard, seeing the expression on the young woman's face through the window. The pure relief, the joy of rescue. It was moments like this that made everything worth it. "That's some fine work, Connor. Fine work." Chapter 6. Connor, Sergeant Hansen, and Captain Foster stood by a back window of the bar, the 3 men positioned so they could talk with Earl. As they chatted, Private Parker helped Miranda into one of their vehicles about 20 yards away. He kept watch out at the street, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. The young woman moved slowly, exhaustion evident in every step. Parker's hand stayed on her elbow, guiding her gently. She was dehydrated, scared, but alive. That was what mattered. "Connor, you and your friends did a great thing today," Earl said. His voice carried gratitude, the kind that came from watching someone risk their life for a stranger. Connor shook his head slightly, uncomfortable with the praise. "We have the means to get things done, which means we have a responsibility to do it," Connor replied. Earl leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on the windowsill. His eyes studied Connor's face, seeing something there that impressed him. "I get the sense that your level of selflessness might be a hard thing to find these days," Earl observed. Connor shifted his weight, the bloody bat still resting on his shoulder. He looked out at the parking lot, at the bodies they'd left behind, then back to Earl. "I'm hopeful that when people see us in action, it will spur them to help," Connor said. Earl nodded slowly, understanding the sentiment. He was quiet for a moment, considering his next words carefully. "And I'm happy to help out as much as I can, so long as it doesn't involve me leaving my bar here. My home is above it, and I've been here 27 years, and I have no intention of leaving," Earl explained. His tone made it clear this wasn't negotiable. This was his place, his territory. He'd defended it this long and wasn't about to abandon it now. "Nor would I ask you to. However, we could use your help in dealing with these things," Connor said. Earl's expression brightened slightly, interested in the possibility. He straightened up a bit, his posture becoming more engaged. "Give me a call later on today, and we can figure that part out. In the meantime, have a little treat on me," Earl said. He vanished from the window for a moment, bending down. They could hear him moving things around, bottles clinking. Then he emerged again with 2 six-packs of beer gripped in his hands. The bottles were cold, condensation forming on the glass in the desert heat. He slid them through the window carefully, getting a smile from Connor. "You're too kind, Earl," Connor said. The bodyguard took the beer, the weight substantial in his hands. Foster raised an eyebrow but said nothing, a slight smirk crossing his face. "It's the least I can do." "Now get that girl home to her family," Earl replied. "Will do, Earl. I'll be in touch," Connor said. Connor shifted one six-pack under his arm so he could extend his hand through the window. Earl gripped it firmly, the handshake solid. Two men coming to an understanding, building the foundation of something more. As their hands separated, Parker's voice called out from the gate, urgent but controlled. "Hey, Cap, we need to get a move on. We got a pack of those things heading our way," Parker said. Connor turned and nodded to Earl one last time before joining the soldiers in, walking back across the parking lot to the gate. Their boots stepped around and over bodies, the pavement slick with blood in places. They reached the chain-link gate and opened it just wide enough for them to slip through single file. Connor went first, then Hanson, then Foster. Once all three were outside, they pulled it shut and secured the latch. "What are we dealing with, Parker?" Foster asked. The private pointed down the street to their left, his arm extended. "About 30 of them a couple blocks down. They're shamblers, but they're definitely heading this way," Parker reported. Foster could see them now, a mass of bodies moving in their direction. The horde was slow but steady, drawn by the noise they'd made clearing the parking lot. 30 zombies weren't overwhelming, but they didn't need to stick around and engage if they didn't have to. "Connor, do you have any more detours, or are you ready to head back?" Foster asked. Connor looked into the passenger seat of the SUV where Miranda sat. The young woman was slumped against the door, her eyes half closed. She looked exhausted and terrified, barely holding herself together. But when she noticed Connor looking, she straightened slightly and gave him a thankful nod. The gesture was small but meaningful. "We've done enough today, Foster. Let's get that girl home to her family," Connor said. The captain nodded, satisfied with the answer. He motioned for everyone to mount up, his hand gesturing to the vehicles. The men moved quickly, each heading to their assigned truck. Doors opened and closed, engines started. Within moments, all three vehicles were running, and they headed out. Foster took point, leading them away from the approaching horde. He took the first turn, putting distance between them and the zombies. The other two vehicles followed, maintaining formation. It took a few minutes to drive back towards the fortified neighborhood, the trio of vehicles cutting down side streets to avoid creatures as they shambled out into the road. Each time they spotted zombies ahead, Foster would take an alternate route. No point in engaging when they could simply go around. The afternoon sun was high now, beating down on the vehicles. The heat made the air shimmer above the pavement, creating mirages in the distance. But the neighborhood came into view, familiar now. Before too long, they had their destination in sight, pulling up to the back fence where they had climbed over earlier. As they pulled up and stopped, a young woman appeared on the other side of the fence. She raised a ladder, positioning it carefully against the chain link so that they could get over. Then her eyes landed on Miranda in the passenger seat and lit up with recognition and relief. "My God, you found Miranda," Julia said. Her voice carried across the space, filled with surprise. Connor jumped out of his truck, leaving the keys in the cup holder. He moved quickly, jumping into the truck bed. He leaned down through the passenger window, speaking softly to Miranda. The young woman looked up at him with exhausted eyes. Connor helped her out of the seat, his hands gentle but firm. He guided her to stand in the truck bed, then positioned her at the fence. Together they navigated the climb, Connor supporting most of her weight as they went up and over. Julia was there waiting, making sure Miranda reached the ground safely on the other side. Her hands steadied the younger woman, keeping her upright. "Are you okay?" Julia asked. She was studying Miranda's face, looking for injuries or signs of trauma beyond the obvious exhaustion. "Yeah, I'm just ready to see my parents and sleep in my own bed," Miranda replied. Her voice was hoarse, probably from dehydration and screaming, but she managed a weak smile. "Julia, go ahead and get her home. I'm going to chat with the soldiers for a minute. I'll come by and check on you later. Okay, Miranda?" Connor said. The traumatized woman nodded, not trusting herself to speak more. Julia put her arm around Miranda's shoulders, supporting her weight as she began guiding her away from the fence. They moved slowly, Miranda's steps unsteady. "And Captain, I'll let your man know that you're back," Julia called over her shoulder. "Thank you," Foster replied from the truck. The two women walked off, heading down a path between houses toward the next block. Connor waited, watching them go. He didn't speak until they were out of earshot, their forms disappearing around a corner. Then he turned back to Foster, his expression becoming more serious. "Well, Foster, I think we're off to a pretty solid start, don't you?" Connor asked. Foster nodded, his arms crossed as he leaned against the truck. He'd been evaluating Connor all day, watching how the man handled himself under pressure. "I think so, Connor. You handled yourself out there. I'm hoping you can keep that up and help some people out," Foster said. Connor grinned, the expression genuine. He shifted the bat to his other shoulder, the metal catching the sunlight. "I'll do my part, Captain. Save a few people, crack a few skulls." "Just another day at the office?" Connor replied. Foster pushed off from the truck, straightening to his full height. His expression became more intent, focused. "You have my number. When you need something, I want you to reach out. We're in this fight together," Foster said. "I appreciate the Captain, and I know you've done a lot for my community already today, but I do have a request," Connor said. His tone shifted slightly, becoming more cautious, like he was about to ask for something bigger than supplies or weapons. "What is it?" Foster asked. Connor took a breath, organizing his thoughts. This clearly wasn't easy for him to talk about. "There's a luxury community a few miles to the south of here called Lake Las Vegas. It's large, well-defended, but I fear that the majority of the people who are inside the gates are trapped and not safe. A man named Sammy Torino is in charge, and he's ruthless," Connor explained. Foster's expression hardened slightly at the description. Ruthless wasn't a word people use lightly these days. "Well, Connor, you got weapons and manpower. I'm not going to stop you if you want to do something about it," Foster said. Connor shook his head, frustration evident in the gesture, his jaw clenched. "Believe me, Foster, there's nothing I'd like more than to march right through those gates and put a bullet right between Sammy's eyes. But it's not that simple," Connor said. Foster raised an eyebrow, crossing his arms again. "Well, it doesn't sound all that complicated," Foster replied. "Unfortunately, it is. My last bodyguard gig was protecting Sammy. I lost 3 good men getting him from the strip back to his home. And my reward for risking my life? Sammy tried to have me killed," Connor explained. The bitterness in his voice was clear, the wound still fresh despite everything else that had happened. Foster's expression shifted to understanding, the pieces falling into place. "How did you manage to escape?" Foster asked. Connor's face showed conflict, the memory clearly complicated. "That's the thing, I didn't. His top guard, a man named Landry, let me go," Connor said. Foster began putting the pieces together, his mind working through the implications. He nodded his head once it all clicked, understanding the full picture now. "So if you go back there and get caught, the man who let you go gets a bullet," Foster said. "So you see my issue," Connor replied. Foster was quiet for a moment, considering the situation. This was more complicated than just clearing zombies or rescuing survivors. This was politics, personal grudges, loyalty, and betrayal. "I do. My only question is, what are you asking us to do?" "Because we're not exactly a kill squad," Foster said. He hesitated for a moment, then a slight smile crossed his face. "I mean, we are, and we're damn good at it. But we're not going to go take out someone without a damn good reason," Foster continued. Connor held up his hands, making his intentions clear. "And I'd be an asshole to ask you to do that. No, Foster. All I'm asking you to do is go there and make contact with them. See if you can get a sense if people are in danger. Hell, try and get Sammy on board with what you're doing. They have a small army down there, so they'd be good people to have on our side," Connor said. Foster contemplated for a moment, weighing the request. Another group of survivors, especially one with manpower and defenses, could be valuable, even if their leader was questionable. He nodded slowly. "All right, Connor, I'll go check it out," Foster said. His attention was drawn to the right as movement caught his eye. He spotted Cooper walking towards the ladder from deeper in the neighborhood, a notebook in his hand. "Hey, Cooper, how are things looking down there?" Foster called out. Cooper reached the fence and began climbing, the notebook tucked into his vest. "Better than I thought they would, if I'm being honest. I made a few notes about what they need, but I'm positive I have plenty of the stuff back at the warehouse," Cooper reported. Foster nodded, pleased with the assessment. One less problem to solve. "Good man. Connor, it might be a day or two before I can get stuff over here to you," Foster said. Connor waved off the concern, understanding the limitations they were working under. "We've survived this long. I think we can manage a couple more days, Connor said. He extended his hand for a shake, which Foster took. Their grips were firm, the handshake sealing their alliance. Once Cooper was over the fence and had dropped down into the truck bed, both soldiers jumped down from their positions and got back into the truck. Foster moved to the driver's side, pulling the door open. Hanson was already in the passenger seat, Parker and Cooper in the back. "I'll be in touch, Connor," Foster said. "I look forward to it, Foster. You boys stay safe out there," Connor replied. Foster nodded as he settled behind the wheel, everybody else piling into their positions. He started the engine, the familiar rumble filling the cab. Hanson reached for the GPS on the dash, punching in their compound coordinates. But before he could set the route, Foster grabbed the device from his hand. "We're not going home, Cap?" Hanson asked. His tone carried surprise and a hint of fatigue. They'd been out for hours, engaged in multiple fights. The thought of getting back to base was appealing. "Not yet. We're taking a little detour first." Chapter 7. Foster drove the four soldiers south, heading in the direction of Lake Las Vegas. The GPS chirped periodically, that electronic voice guiding them turn by turn. The landscape had shifted from residential to more upscale, the houses getting larger and farther apart. They were entering money territory now. The device chirped again, instructing them to turn at the next road. Foster slowed, preparing to make the turn. But what they saw forced him to stop completely, his foot hitting the brake hard. "Mother of God, what in the hell happened here?" Hanson said. Both Hanson and Foster stared down the street they were about to turn onto. A large black mark scarred the asphalt where an incendiary device had gone off. The burn pattern was at least 20 feet across, the pavement scorched and bubbled from extreme heat. On the ground lay a couple dozen badly burned bodies, their forms twisted and charred beyond recognition. A few of the bodies still tried to move, their limbs twitching, but they were far too damaged to be a threat, the fire having destroyed their muscle tissue and motor control. The charred remains lifted slightly, lacking the strength to pick themselves up. Arms scraped against pavement, legs kicked weakly. The movements were pitiful, almost mechanical. The soldiers stared at them for a moment, taking in the scene. The smell of burned flesh carried on the breeze, acrid and nauseating. "Stay alert. I don't know what we're walking into, but whatever it is, these boys mean business. But nobody fire unless someone takes a shot at us first," Foster ordered. There was a smattering of "yes, sirs" coming from the men, their voices tense. Foster made the turn onto the road, the truck bouncing slightly as they rolled over the barbecued corpses. The tires crunched over brittle remains, the sound making everyone wince. They drove cautiously down the street, maybe 15 miles per hour. Foster's hands gripped the wheel tight, his eyes scanning constantly. They spotted the lake on the left, the water sparkling in the afternoon sun. On the other side rose the concrete walls of the luxury community, tall and imposing. The walls had to be at least 12 feet high, topped with decorative ironwork that doubled as security. After a while, they spotted the front gate up ahead. A row of cars was parked outside of it, maybe 8 or 9 vehicles scattered haphazardly. Several had their doors hanging open, abandoned in panic. A smattering of zombies roamed about between the cars, maybe a dozen of them, shambling aimlessly. The road leading to the gate was at the intersection ahead, and they couldn't see the entrance itself from their current vantage point. Foster parked 50 yards from the cars, pulling to the side of the road. He put the truck in park but left it running, ready for a quick exit if needed. He looked ahead, trying to get a sense of the situation. The gate was clearly defended, but how well remained to be seen. "So, how do you want to play it?" Hanson asked. Foster drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, thinking through options. They needed to make contact, but approaching unknown survivors was always risky, especially ones who'd clearly been aggressive with fire. "I would say walk on up and ring the bell, but with a neighborhood like this, I'm almost positive they have no solicitation signs," Foster said. Hanson chuckled, the tension breaking slightly. He appreciated the captain's ability to find humor, even in tense situations. "We could crack a few skulls, get up on one of the cars, see if that piques their interest," Hanson suggested. Foster nodded, the plan simple but effective. Make some noise, show they were capable, get someone's attention. "Not a bad idea. I think I can manage that," Foster said. Hansen turned to look at him, surprised by the singular pronoun. "You don't want to go up as a squad?" Hansen asked. Foster shook his head, his expression serious. "I want you three to hang back, just in case they don't like me," Foster said. Hansen understood the logic. If things went bad, better to have backup ready than commit everyone to a potentially hostile situation. He nodded and slid over into the driver's seat as Foster stepped out of the truck. The captain stretched slightly, rolling his shoulders. He motioned to Parker in the back for a baseball bat. The private grabbed one of the metal ones they'd been using, handing it over the side of the truck bed. Foster took it, testing the weight with a few practice swings. "You need some backup, Cap?" Parker asked. Foster shook his head, slinging the bat over his shoulder. "I'm good, Parker. Just have that shotgun ready," Foster replied. Parker nodded, his hand moving to rest on his weapon. The message was clear. If shooting started, they'd provide cover. Foster turned and began walking up the road towards the intersection, 50 yards away. His stride was casual, unhurried, like he was just out for a stroll. As he walked, he gently tapped the metal baseball bat on the asphalt. Each tap sent a metallic ping sound through the air, the noise carrying in the quiet afternoon. It was deliberate, announcing his presence. The noise drew the attention of a couple of zombies that had been focused on the driver's side window of a sedan, their heads turned toward the sound, dead eyes fixing on Foster. As they turned and began shambling towards him, the captain could see inside the vehicle more clearly. A zombified driver thrashed about in the front seat, still strapped in by the seatbelt. The creature pulled against the restraint, hands clawing at the interior, forever trapped by something as simple as a safety device. Its jaw worked constantly, teeth gnashing at nothing. Foster kept casually walking forward, his pace steady. He rested the bat on his shoulder, conserving energy. As the first creature got within striking distance, Foster moved. The captain delivered a forceful strike to the side of its head without breaking stride. The bat connected with a wet crunch, the skull caving in. The zombie dropped instantly, its body hitting the pavement. Foster stepped over it, already focused on the next target. As the second one got within reach, he repeated the attack. Same swing, same result. The creature's head caved in and it collapsed in a heap. 2 bodies down, no wasted movement. Foster could see several more creatures scattered amongst the cars ahead, maybe 5 or 6 of them. None of them had managed to notice him yet, their attention focused elsewhere. Some were pressed against car windows, others wandered between vehicles. He took this opportunity to jog forward, picking up speed. His boots pounded on the asphalt as he closed the distance. He jumped, planting one foot on the hood of the zombie-filled sedan, then pushed off to land on the roof. The metal dented slightly under his weight, but held. Foster looked over to the front gate, which was now clearly visible about 30 yards away. The entrance was sealed up tightly, the gate's solid metal reinforced with additional barriers. Above it rose a guard tower, elevated maybe 15 feet off the ground. The structure was sturdy, professionally built. It wasn't long before one of the guards perched high above in the guard tower noticed him. The man did a double take, clearly not believing what he was seeing. A soldier standing on top of a car, surrounded by zombies, just waiting to talk. "What in the hell?" the guard said. His voice carried across the distance, confused and alarmed. Foster gave a friendly wave, his hand raising in greeting. "Good afternoon. I was wondering if I could speak to the man of the house," Foster called out. His tone was conversational, polite, like he was a door-to-door salesman and not standing in the middle of a zombie-filled parking lot. The guard continued staring at him for a moment, his expression bewildered. Then he put up a single finger, the universal gesture for, "Wait a second." Foster watched as the man pulled out a radio, speaking into it urgently. His lips moved rapidly, gesturing toward Foster with his free hand. Once he was done, the guard looked back down. "My supervisor is on his way," the guard called. "I appreciate that," Foster replied. He settled into a more comfortable stance, the bat resting across his shoulders. His arms draped over it casually. Foster could see the panic building in the guard's eyes as movement caught his attention. The man began raising his rifle, bringing it to his shoulder. At first, the captain went into a defensive stance, his body tensing, but he quickly realized that the guard wasn't aiming at him. The man was reacting to a couple of zombies that were heading towards the car Foster was standing on, drawn by the noise and movement. Easy now, I got it, Foster said. He raised his bat up, pulling it from his shoulders. The first zombie reached the car, its hands slapping against the side panel. Foster brought the bat down onto the top of its head with a casual swing. The skull cracked open and the creature dropped. He repeated the process for the other one, same efficient motion. Both bodies lay on the pavement within seconds. The captain looked at the bloodied barrel of his weapon, noticing a bit of brain matter stuck on the metal. Gray tissue clung to the surface, refusing to shake loose. He flicked the bat around for a moment, getting the bit of zombie off of it. The tissue finally fell, landing on the car roof with a wet plop. By the time he finished cleaning his weapon, 3 men appeared in the guard tower. 2 of them were clearly guards, wearing tactical gear and carrying rifles. But one man stuck out immediately. He was older, dressed in a high-dollar suit that probably cost more than Foster made in a month. The suit was perfectly tailored, not a wrinkle visible. His expression was a mixture of intrigue and annoyance, like Foster was an interesting problem he needed to solve. "And just who might you be?" the well-dressed man asked. His voice carried authority, the tone of someone used to being obeyed without question. "I'm Captain Foster, or just Foster if you like." "Who do I have the pleasure of speaking to?" Foster replied. The man's expression shifted slightly, a knowing smile crossing his face. He straightened his tie, a calculated gesture. "You must not be from around here, soldier. The name's Sammy Torino, and I regret to inform you that you're trespassing on my property," Sammy said. His tone was pleasant but carried an undercurrent of threat. This was a man who smiled while making threats, Foster realized. "And for that, you have my sincere apology, sir. I assure you that there was no ill intent on my part," Foster said. "I assumed as much, which is why I didn't have my guards here open fire on you as soon as I laid eyes on you. Now, before I give that order, why don't you tell me what you want?" Sammy replied. Foster kept his focus on Sammy, not breaking eye contact. But he could see movement on the ground in his peripheral vision, taking note of several zombies working their way to his car. They shambled between the other vehicles, drawn by the voices and activity. "Well, Sammy, my team and I are working to take this city back from the zombies that are currently occupying it. I'm just out here trying to recruit some people to the cause," Foster explained. Sammy got an almost laughing grin on his face as he responded. The expression was condescending, like he'd just heard the world's best joke. "Captain Foster, I knew that name sounded familiar the moment you said it. You're that maniac that Midnight Mike goes on and on about," Sammy said. Foster allowed himself a small smile at that. Mike's radio show had clearly reached farther than he'd thought. "I'm sure Mike will be thrilled to know someone of your stature is listening to his little program," Foster said. Sammy waved his hand dismissively, the gesture casual. "It's not like there are a lot of options these days," Sammy replied. "I'll leave that part out when I tell him," Foster said. Sammy's expression hardened slightly, the pleasant facade dropping away. His eyes went cold. "You can tell him whatever you want, just as long as you do it from somewhere else," Sammy said. Foster glanced down, spotting 6 zombies surrounding the car now. They reached up for him with grasping hands but couldn't quite grab him. The height of the car roof kept him just out of reach, but the numbers were building, more shambling over from between the other vehicles. "I'm guessing by your tone that you're not interested in helping clear out the city," Foster asked. Sammy spread his arms wide, the gesture encompassing the walls around him. "I have everything I need right here, Captain. Food, the best booze selection in the state, and a world-class golf course. What happens outside these walls is of no concern to me," Sammy explained. His tone made it clear this wasn't negotiable. He'd built his fortress and had no intention of leaving it. "That's a shame, Sammy. You and your private army there would be a great asset to have," Foster said. Sammy's expression shifted immediately, suspicion replacing the casual dismissal. His eyes narrowed. "Private army, huh? Now, how would you know about that?" Sammy asked. Foster realized his mistake immediately. He'd revealed information he shouldn't have, connecting himself to Connor without meaning to. He hemmed and hawed for a moment, scrambling for a plausible explanation. "I'm pretty sure Midnight Mike brought it up during one of our chats," Foster said. The lie was weak, and they both knew it. Sammy smirked, shaking his head slightly in a menacing manner. His hand moved to rest on the railing of the guard tower. "You know, Captain, you weren't doing so bad there, but the bullshit finally caught up to you. Now I suggest you get moving, because in 10 seconds my boys here are going to start taking shots at you, Sammy said. His tone was casual, conversational, like he was discussing the weather and not threatening to kill someone. So I'm guessing that's a no to the help then? Foster asked. He was already tensing, preparing to move. The zombies around the car were pressing closer. 8 seconds, Sammy said. Okay, I'm out of here, Foster replied. He didn't hesitate. Foster pushed off the roof of the car with as much force as he could muster, his legs driving down hard. The momentum propelled him over a trio of zombies on that side of the car, his body clearing their reaching hands by inches. He landed hard, his knees bending to absorb the impact. He pumped his legs hard, sprinting away from the gate. He'd gotten maybe 5 yards when he heard shots going off from the front gate. The cracks echoed across the parking lot, bullets whizzing through the air. But the shots weren't directed at him, he realized. They were shooting the zombies around where he'd been standing. In an instant, he saw Hansen hit the gas, the truck speeding towards him. The engine roared as it accelerated. Rather than escalate the confrontation, the captain held his hands up high, signaling Hansen to stop. The sergeant hit the brakes, bringing the truck to a sliding halt about 10 feet away. Foster rushed up, yanking open the passenger side door and diving in. He slammed it shut behind him, breathing hard. "Get us out of here, Sarge," Foster ordered. Hansen didn't need to be told twice. He turned the truck around in a tight arc, the tires squealing. Then he floored it, quickly putting distance between them and the gate. The compound shrank in the rearview mirror. "Are you good, Cap?" Hansen asked. He glanced over at Foster, checking for injuries. The captain was catching his breath, but looked intact. "Yeah, I don't think they were shooting at me," Foster replied. "So the talk didn't go well, I take it?" Hansen asked. Foster let out a dry laugh, shaking his head. "No, Sarge, it did not," Foster confirmed. Hansen kept his speed up, putting several blocks between them and Lake Las Vegas before easing off the accelerator. When they were safely away, he spoke again. "What do you want to do?" Hansen asked. "The only thing we can do. Get back to the compound and figure out where we're hitting next," Foster said. "What about this place?" Hansen asked, gesturing back with his thumb. "Ignore it for as long as we can and hope they stay inside their walls," Foster replied. "And if they don't?" Hansen pressed. Foster turned to look at his sergeant, his eyes cold. "Then we make them regret it." Chapter 8. Foster drove the group back towards the compound inside the supercenter warehouse. The afternoon sun was starting its descent, casting long shadows across the industrial landscape. As they drove through the warehouse district, they checked each cross street for threats. Foster would slow at each intersection, all 4 men scanning left and right before continuing. They were a couple of blocks from their destination when they spotted 24 zombies shambling down the road ahead. The creatures moved in a loose group, spread across both lanes. Their movements were slow, uncoordinated, all shamblers, no runners visible among them. "What do you think, Sarge? Should we clear them out or wait until they get up to the compound?" Foster asked. Hansen looked down at his watch, checking the time. The face showed they still had plenty of daylight remaining. "We got another hour or so of daylight. Might as well stretch our legs before turning in for the night," Hansen said. Foster nodded in agreement. Better to deal with threats now than have them show up at their gate later. He knocked on the back window, getting the attention of Parker and Cooper in the back. Both privates turned, leaning down to hear better. "We're going to clear this lot out before heading back." "You boys game?" Foster asked. Parker grinned, already reaching for his bat. "We're always game, Cap. Get us up there, and we'll crack some heads," Parker said. Cooper nodded enthusiastically, testing his grip on his weapon. "Yeah, you two can sit back and relax. We'll cover it," Cooper added. Foster allowed himself a small smile at their eagerness. "Well, I'm sold," Foster said. He hit the gas, driving up toward the horde shambling down the street. The truck closed the distance quickly, the engine noise drawing the attention of the zombies. Their heads turned in unison, arms raising as they changed direction toward the vehicle. Foster stopped just short of them, maybe 10 yards away. Then he executed a 3-point turn, backing the truck up toward the creatures. The maneuver positioned the bed perfectly for Parker and Cooper to engage. As he threw the truck into park, the 2 privates got in position to crack skulls, standing with their bats ready. "You know, Cap, I was thinking," Hansen said. Foster turned to look at his sergeant, one eyebrow raised. "That's always a dangerous proposition, Sarge," Foster replied. Hansen let out a laugh and playfully flipped his friend off, the middle finger raised for a moment before dropping. The casual gesture spoke to years of friendship beneath the military hierarchy. "Anyway, I was thinking, we should start building out our defenses a bit," Hansen continued. Foster's expression became more serious, considering the suggestion. "That fence is pretty strong. I think it'll hold up against anything that comes our way," Foster said. Behind them, the steady crack of bats hitting skulls provided percussion to their conversation. Parker and Cooper worked methodically, putting down zombies as they shambled within range. "Even so, I think it might be good to expand out a bit, especially if we end up having a horde wander our way. Those fences can handle a few hundred, but a few thousand? It might go," Hansen said. Foster thought about the scenario, imagining hundreds of bodies pressed against their perimeter. The mental image wasn't pleasant. "All right, what are you thinking?" Foster asked. Hansen gestured out the windshield toward the parking lots and abandoned vehicles they'd seen throughout the area. "We have all those cars in the parking lot. I say we block off the main road in front of the compound, maybe a couple of the side streets as well. It might not hold back a massive horde, but if nothing else, it will buy us some time," Hansen explained. Foster thought about it for a moment, running through the logistics, moving cars, positioning them properly, securing them so they couldn't be easily pushed aside. It was doable. He nodded slowly. "Okay, I don't have a problem with that. Once you get them in position, though, I want someone to siphon off the gas. We're doing okay on fuel so far, but it's not going to be long before it becomes an issue," Foster said. Hansen pulled out a small notebook from his vest pocket, making a quick note. His handwriting was cramped but legible. "Sounds good, Cap. I'll get a few of the civilians working on that once we get back. Might go a long way towards making them feel useful," Hansen said. Before the duo could continue, Parker knocked on the back window, 3 sharp raps that got their attention immediately. "Are you good back there, Parker?" Foster asked, turning in his seat. "We're wrapped up back here, Cap," Parker replied. Foster looked in the side mirrors, spotting a pile of bodies on either side of the truck. Each corpse had a caved-in head, the kills clean and efficient. Dark blood pooled on the asphalt beneath them. "You boys made short work of them," Foster observed. Parker's grin was visible even in the mirror's reflection. "What can I say? We're getting good at this," Parker replied. Foster let out a chuckle as he put the truck into drive, pulling away from the pile of bodies. He headed back to the compound, navigating the familiar streets. Before too long, he was parking in front of the gate, scanning the area. No creatures were within sight, the perimeter clear. A few moments later, the soldiers were over the fence, dropping down safely inside the compound. Their boots hit the pavement one by one, the familiar routine now second nature. The 4 of them walked up towards the main building, their gear clanking softly with each step. Foster's cell phone began ringing as they approached the door. He pulled it from his pocket and saw Mike's number on the display. The timing made him shake his head. "I swear, it's like he knows we're free to talk." "It's uncanny," Foster said. Hansen pointed up to the sky, which was beginning to show the first signs of sunset. Bright reds and purple hues were starting to paint the horizon, the colors vivid against the darkening blue. "Or maybe he just knows that we're typically back before sundown," Hansen replied. The captain let out a laugh, conceding the point. He motioned for the others to head inside while he answered the phone, bringing it to his ear. "How's it going over there, Mike?" Foster asked. Mike's voice came through, tired but upbeat as always. Same old Foster. I had a nice chat with our friend Connor, who was very impressed with you and your men," Mike said. Foster felt a small sense of satisfaction at that. Connor was good people, and his respect meant something. The feeling was mutual. "You did a good job finding him," Foster replied. "He's not the only one I have, Captain. I've made contact with half a dozen groups around town who are beginning to organize," Mike explained. The news lifted Foster's spirits even more. More groups meant more people fighting back, more pockets of resistance. "That's great news, Mike. I don't suppose any of them are close by to you, are they?" Foster asked. There was a pause before Mike responded, disappointment evident in his voice. "Unfortunately not, and they don't really have the means to get over to me even if they did," Mike said. Foster sighed, but he'd expected as much. Mike's radio station was isolated, and getting there would require navigating through heavily infested areas. Well, it was worth a shot. I guess we'll have to meet face to face after all, Foster said. He let out a bit of a laugh, letting Mike know he was just joking around. The DJ had become an important ally, and Foster wanted to make sure he survived. Are you coming up tomorrow? Because if I have to eat another pack of crackers... Mike trailed off. His displeasure over his diet was clear. Foster could sympathize. Living on crackers for days on end sounded miserable. Yeah, we'll be headed your way in the morning. Assuming you have a course through the tunnels for us, Foster confirmed. Yeah, I'm putting the finishing touches on it now. My contact had to go check his records to make sure he was right. I should have it for you in an hour or so, Mike said. Foster could hear papers rustling in the background, Mike probably surrounded by maps and notes. Sounds good, Mike. Well, I'm going to go grab a bite to eat and make sure your care package is prepped and ready to go for the morning, Foster said. Give me a call once you're settled, Mike replied. Will do, Mike, Foster said. He clicked the phone off, pocketing it as he walked into the office portion of the warehouse. The building was more active than when they'd left, people moving around and working on various tasks. Foster barely made it past the interior barricade when Amanda's voice rang out, excited and urgent. Foster! Foster! Amanda called. The captain looked over to see the young woman waving at him frantically from the doorway of the small office they'd been using for planning. Her expression was animated, eyes bright with enthusiasm. He let out a small sigh, knowing that his rest was going to have to wait a little while longer. Hey Amanda, what do you have? Foster asked. He walked over to the small office, his boots heavy on the carpet. As he approached, he spotted Parker sitting on the desk with a devious grin on his face. The private looked like the cat that ate the canary, clearly in on whatever Amanda was excited about. I know that expression. Parker, tell me now. Do I need alcohol for what you're about to say? Foster asked. Parker's grin widened, his eyes sparkling with amusement. It's funny you say that, Cap, because I think Amanda's cracked our little zombie problem, Parker said. Foster looked over to the young woman with intrigue, one eyebrow raised. His full attention was on her now, waiting. Amanda stared at him and spoke 2 words. Party buses, Amanda said. Foster wasn't sure what to make of her suggestion. His expression showed confusion, trying to connect party buses to clearing zombies. Party buses? Foster repeated. Amanda nodded enthusiastically, practically bouncing on her feet. Yep, party buses. I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out, Amanda said. Foster leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms. His posture said he was listening, even if skeptical. By all means, Foster replied. Amanda took a breath, organizing her thoughts. Her hands moved as she spoke, gesturing to emphasize points. Okay, so I spent half the day staring at helicopters, just knowing in my gut that we could do something with that. But getting the zombies' attention and keeping it while flying overhead wasn't exactly feasible. We'd burn too much fuel getting them going in the right direction. However, Amanda trailed off. She got so excited that she had to take a moment to gather herself, her hands pressing against her chest. Then she continued, the words tumbling out rapidly. But with party buses, we could take our time and lure those things out into the desert. The stereo systems in those things can rattle windows from 100 yards, so they'll keep their attention. Once we're clear of the city, we can drive on for miles, get them moving in the right direction, and use the helicopter to pick up the driver. Lather, rinse, repeat, Amanda explained. Foster went into contemplation, his eyes distant as he worked through the idea. The more he thought about it, the more it grew on him. Party buses were large, durable, and designed to be loud. The zombie lure problem solved by Vegas excess. Party buses, huh? Foster said slowly. Parker nodded from his perch on the desk, still grinning. Party buses, Parker confirmed. Amanda's enthusiasm hadn't dimmed, her expression hopeful, as she watched Foster process the idea. I figured we're in Vegas, so we might as well use what we have at our disposal, Amanda said. Foster continued nodding in agreement as he thought through the logistics. The size of the buses, the fuel capacity, the sound systems. How many zombies could one bus draw? How far into the desert would they need to go? The questions were coming fast, but the core idea was solid. Okay, Amanda, I'm putting you on point with this. I want you to go through the phone book and find every party bus company in town. Figure out where those buses are and map them out. Meanwhile, I'll talk to Mike to see if he can't find us a pilot, Foster said. Parker spoke up from the desk, adding the final piece. Then all we have to do is find a helicopter, Parker said. Foster stared at Parker for a moment, his expression blank. Amanda joined in the staring, both of them waiting for the private to realize his mistake. After a few seconds, Parker's face fell as comprehension dawned. He closed his eyes in shame. "Nellis, how did I not know that?" Parker said. Amanda's tone was diplomatic, trying not to pile on. "I was going to be polite and not ask that," Amanda said. Foster couldn't resist, shaking his head at his soldier. "I was about to call you a dumbass, but I think you already called yourself that," Foster said. The three of them broke out into laughter, the sound filling the small office. The tension and stress of the day melted away for a moment, replaced by amusement. After a few seconds, they settled down, smiles still on their faces. "That's good work, Amanda. Keep it up," Foster said. The young woman nodded, already reaching for a phone book that sat on the desk. Her mind was clearly racing ahead, planning the next steps. Foster turned to walk out of the office, heading toward the break room and the promise of food. He had a little bit of a bounce in his step because for the first time, it felt like they had a viable plan for dealing with the millions of zombies that had engulfed their city. Not just surviving, but actually winning. The end.